Karibu. I would also like to invite on stage a gentleman who has had a desire to help young entrepreneurs capitalize their brand on this digital age. He has extensive experience with, for example, Samsung East Africa, Seacom, and Orange Telecom. He's now the MD and founder of his company, Alexander PR and Communication Network. Could we please put our hands together as we welcome on stage Mr. Alexander Owiti. One more time. Let's show him some love as he makes his way on stage. And then last, certainly not least, she was also here on stage. I'd like to invite on stage a lady who, as I said before, is skilled in advertising and branding, especially for the corporate market. And she has authored her own book, A Candid Handbook for Women Doing Business in Kenya, and she's the founder of Conference in a Box, which is a turnkey solution provider for conferences. Please put your hands together as we welcome on stage Patricia Okello. And remember, please, if you do have any questions that you have, be it those that have come from this conversation we're about to have and those that from the previous conversation that Tamima and Catherine had, please remember to jot them down and we'll give you an opportunity to ask so that we can be able to really capitalize on the digital age or how to engage the millennials. Now, the conversation we're about to have here today is really about social media, because that is the world where millennials live on. It has been said before many times that millennials live their lives on social media. And maybe I can begin with you, Tamima. I do know that despite the fact, you do have a show that you run on Switch TV, but more to that, that show is very successful on YouTube. And I've seen it has, for example, videos that are in their thousands in terms of views. There's one particular video that has even reached 200,000. So why have a show, which is what is common in Kenya, where you have a show on TV, and then put that same content on social media? Why do that?
Okay, I think the best way to answer that for you would be now, because from my industry, we are driven by content. So because we are living in 2019, what has changed is the platforms. How people get that content is what has changed. So we are recognizing that, yes, we run a TV channel, but at the end of the day, the principle that I was mentioning earlier, just because we have a TV channel and it's running, it doesn't mean they'll watch it. So we have to go out of our way to make sure that the content is available to the audience, in my context, where the audience is. So if they're on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, if they're on YouTube, if they're on whichever platform which I don't know about today, but it will be there in the next 4 weeks, we will go out of our way to make sure that we are also there. So in the context of the millennial, it's because we live in an age where, I mentioned this earlier again, unlike any other generation, we are more educated, meaning we are spending more time in school. And because we are more educated, there is pressure. Because you have an education, you have to be successful. So we are hustling. You're at a job. And then because now you're successful, you're expected to get married. You're married, you have a husband, you have children, you have to take care of yourself. So you're realizing this is someone who, yes, they have 24 hours in a day, but in those 24 hours, they have so much to do. So they are quickly figuring out, I want solutions. I want people who can help me get what I need, get it fast. Do what I need, do it efficiently. And at the end of the day, I still want to feel satisfied. Don't make me feel like I'm living a rat race. So social media for a lot of people is that. I have not seen someone who perhaps was my friend in high school. We're the best of friends. We've never met face to face. But thanks to Instagram, thanks to WhatsApp video, it's like we never left high school. Because we'll find 15 minutes, even if this person is halfway across the world. It's cheaper to actually call using WhatsApp nowadays, eh? And you see the person. So those are millennials for you. And I have friends, and this is so ridiculous. I didn't understand it until I became one of those people. You have someone who is literally halfway across the world, and you're on WhatsApp video. And it's like the person is next to you. As you're walking, as you're cooking, the phone is just there. They're watching you cook. I know it's creepy as hell, but that is who the millennial is. As I'm talking to you, my cousin who lives in Canada, I might as well be dealing with my child, dealing with what my family is gonna eat at night, because I'm figuring out how can I do things fast and do them efficiently.
I'll actually come back to you a little bit later because you've mentioned content is a big deal in trying to reach millennials. But before we do that, Alex, I know you've witnessed the transition, the one that I had mentioned earlier, where we used to write letters, but now we live our lives on the digital age. I know you've interacted with brands that have moved from what was to what is today. So maybe could you tell us a little bit about that transition, and for brands here that have not fully moved to the digital age, how they can do that, and of course then how we can reach out to the millennial market.
Hi everyone. As you said, I'm Alex Witty. So I've been in the PR industry for the last 14 years. So worked for Ogilvy, worked for Ginadine, and also worked for Corporate Talk. And then I decided that I'm not going to retire like my grandfathers or dads. So I'm going to take a leap of faith and start my own organization, which is 5 years now. But for your question, we've seen the transition. And the transition came in as far as technology is concerned. I have actually handled a lot of technology companies, as we've mentioned, and that is my sphere, despite handling other corporates. So the internet disruption is the biggest thing actually in Kenya. If you compare us with South Africa, Nigeria, or even Egypt, you find that in terms of internet penetration, it is highest in Kenya, or in East Africa, if you like, compared to the rest of Africa. So the fact that today we have affordable internet, in fact, there's a research that was done that a millennial would rather sleep hungry but have data bundles, Yeah, he'd rather sleep hungry but have data bundles. So with that in mind, you realize that today with your phone, there's so many communication platforms that you have, the chat groups that you have, and also in terms of consumption of information. How are these millennials consuming information? These guys are always on their phones. In fact, I actually wrote an article on Saturday, if you saw it on Saturday Nation, that was talking about how smartphones are killing the human touch. Yeah? That was my article that I wrote on Daily Nation. So you can see how serious these guys are on their phones. Yeah? They want to see what is the latest thing that Beyonce is doing, as she talked about Beyonce. What is the latest thing that 50 Cent is doing, So they are constantly on their phones, yeah? Today, I wonder who sits down at 9 p.m. and watches news. Who does that? Personally, I'm a crossbreed of the old generation and this other generation of millennials. I still sit down and watch news and flip through TV, watch CNN, because that's my industry. So I want to know what's going on as far as information is concerned. But these individuals, they'll get news first time on their phones. Whatever is happening on Twitter, breaking news, yeah, there's a show as TV is doing, they want to relate to that because they have bundles. And I'll talk about brands like Safaricom. Why is it that today Safaricom, when you buy your bundle, you have an additional extra bundle for YouTube? It's because they've learned that this is the new trend. Yeah, they are enabling it. Yeah, they're enabling it. You'll find that if you travel, if you go to SA, internet is more expensive in SA compared to Kenya. Today, it's more affordable here. So I want to say that the millennials in Kenya are more progressive if I would compare to the rest of the world, despite the fact that innovation is here. Yeah.
And maybe you could touch on, so how did the brands that you've worked with before, for example, Safaricom, how did they move from what was back in the day, for example, advertising on billboards, and they still do that, but they can also be found on social media, quite some. how did they do that transition? And if there's anyone here who is still relying on, for example, print as their way of advertising, or making that cold call as their way of sales, how do you transition from what was to what is today, based on the brands that you've worked with before?
I think what is driving that change is actually the trends themselves. Because when you're moving from your normal print, the traditional media, that is print, TV, and radio, they're still there. But if you realize, anybody who's in my industry will realize that the big corporates, they have cut down their budgets significantly. Why? Because you want engagement. Millennials want to be engaged. They want to feel authentic, that I'm engaging one-on-one with this brand. That's why every brand is online today, trying to become human in a way to be able to engage with the millennials themselves. So, and as you mentioned about content is king today. You'll find that that budget that used to fight with the media houses is today going to individuals like comedians. Today, if you're following on Instagram, you'll see Jemo Yulemse, Eric Omondi. All these guys, the kind of content that they're generating is having more impact because they're engaging one-on-one with the brand rather than the usual TV adverts that you see, the print adverts. Maybe the old school generation, and part of me who still read newspapers, would want to see that on the papers. But all of us are today on social media. But the content has to be different. The content has to be appealing. The content has to be attractive. The content has to be compelling for me to be able to make a conversion, to be able to buy and associate with your brand. Yeah.
Patricia, I know you have conversations, candid conversations with women, and you run a forum where women in business get to interact with each other. But I've also noticed on social media, you move those conversations from face-to-face to social media. Why is that? I would want to think that maybe some conversations should be kept face-to-face, but maybe that's me, Generation X, talking. But please tell us, why move those conversations from face-to-face to social media like Instagram?
So some context. Maybe, I don't know, maybe my role here was to be the other generation. But before I wrote a candid handbook for women doing business, I actually did not have an Instagram account. I actually had one, but I had something like 70 followers because it was a private account. And then when the book came out, and of course because of the entrepreneurs that I had interviewed in the book, many of them have public pages. I remember one day telling me, Patricia, I'm trying to tag you on a post that I have, but your account is private. Why would you be on Instagram and have a private account? And I'm like, why would you have a public account? It didn't even make sense to me. So anyway, within the next 20 minutes, I had to quickly open my public account, which is now Pat Okello, and titled as author. But what I didn't realize about Instagram, it was I would actually love it. I didn't think that I would love it as much as I do today. Now, candid conversations, just before I talk about candid conversations, the one thing I have realized about my experience in social media as a generation, CG, what are we called? The old geezers, is that you're able to interact directly with the person who you're speaking to. And I think that's the big thing, is that I don't have to speak to, you feel there's a bit of, in the irony of it, there's a bit of personal touch to that experience. But the big thing I learned is that human beings are relational, so we want to be in settings like this. And what social media, for me, has done is a setting like this where we're about, maybe 80 people in the room, you can then talk to 800 people using your medium of choice. So you must have human and authentic interactions like this for social media to work. Be it YouTube, whatever it is, you must have the human touch. And that's what I have learned from my experience. The second thing I learned specifically from Instagram is while we call millennials the YOLO generation, to me they are the FOMO generation. The fear of missing out is huge. That's why Coachella is just what it is. That's the reason why these huge events are happening. Yes, people want to be there, even if you're sleeping on, outdoors, etc. You want to say that you were there. And that square of Instagram only shows a snapshot of what is going on. And people who are not there then want to be there. And I think that's the big thing about brand building, is in how do I tap into this, not so much YOLO, but this FOMO, because people then will pay money, will spend money, will take time, to be in that space. Now, Candid Conversations is not filmed. We only take photographs. We don't record anything because we want to try and keep the conversations authentic and people to share true experiences, not for the gram, not for Twitter. And for that's the reason why we do not film. We'll never film it. It'll never happen. But what I realized is the stories that are within the room still have to be spread. And how do you spread it? You must spread it using the medium that people are using. And for us, our medium of choice has been Instagram. My back story is that I've been in the print industry for years, and people will say print is dying. But a lot of us who love print, who love to write, who love to read, we have an attachment to books and to paper and pen to paper. So we have to make it sexy for this generation that is online. You cannot write a book from Facebook posts and Instagram. You'll still have to consolidate all that information somehow, and it takes you to sit down and write it out, be it on your laptop or on a book on paper. The people who buy the book, the generation that buys a candid handbook for women doing business is millennials. It is not the 40 plus or the 45 plus. The audience is 100% millennials. The feedback I get is the book is something that they can carry around with them. They can write when they're waiting in queues. So that whole, the romanticism that is with writing will still remain, and it'll still cut through technology and generations. And for me, that's why I have embraced social media. Yeah, thank you.
So something Alex said, content is king, and then something that Patricia has just said, make it sexy to reach out to them, which now leads to the question that I had alluded to earlier on, which is, if content is king, if we have to keep it sexy so that we can reach this millennial, what are probably the 3 top tips you would give anyone here who's trying to leverage their brand on social media to be able to reach these millennials? What are the 3 top tips you would give them?
I think first thing first, you need to have an account. Yeah, you need to have an account. That's the first thing. To tip number 1, you cannot be on social media as that creeper. And I like how she was honest about the fact that she has a private account that is hers, and then she has one that is a public profile. I think for a lot of people, especially if you're not necessarily an extrovert, social media can put you off because of that. Because what social media demands from you is that you must share. When you go on Facebook, what does Facebook ask you? How are you feeling today? So if you're someone who doesn't want to talk about your feelings, there are people who are like, nah, this ain't for me. I'm not doing this one. But in the context of business, it's important to have a presence. And there are a lot of young people, campus. If you don't understand, they understand. And it could be a way of even just trying to get insights from them, because you're trying to talk to their demographic. So for me, number 1 thing would be get started, get a profile, understand even the name of your business, how to write it. And number 2, I don't want to go into like a long list of this is what you must do. I want to empower you to empower yourself. If you're serious about having a meaningful profile and a meaningful conversation with your consumers or your potential clients on social media, the internet is your friend. Google and see how is that person who's running a car hire business in South Africa, in London, in America, how are they getting by? What are they doing on social media that's working? And you'll find simply by just even shadowing them and implementing the same things for your brand, you'll win. And the other thing that you must now recognize for social media, it is not instant. You'll be wondering, I just joined in June. By August, I post something, I don't even get a like. It's hard out on those streets, huh? So let me just manage you on that front. Those streets are tough. But therein lies the value. Because if you do it right, you'll be the one talking to another business owner who has not even gotten started and tell them, start. You'll not even get a like for a year. But when those likes start coming in, when someone even drops you a direct message, hey, I saw your business, I wanted to reach out and find out about blah, 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 you'll be so happy. Are you understanding? The small things. So you need to figure out, what is my service? how do I want it to be represented? And don't even think of it like rocket science, because there are hundreds and thousands of businesses already existing on these platforms doing it. So find your niche, find your people.